The artist formerly known as Prince Andrew got randy. Labour lost the dodgy man called Bandy. Wigan and Hull KR seem fine and dandy. And Perth wants someone that could be handy. Mandelson left in disgrace for reasons we know, but why did Oldham's Mike Ford up and go? London beat Oldham, but that wasn't the news. Lee and John are here to give you their views. Welcome to the 8th episode of Super League 360, a podcast primarily about the top tier of British Rugby League, but increasingly, John, we seem to be going down into the Championship lately.
I just got to say, that's the best podcast intro I think I've ever heard.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all my family for... Yeah.
No, we do dip into the Championship. I mean, the Championship is 2 rounds in and Super League kicks off in 9 days as we record this, so we will switch focus. But I mean, I think the Championship, there's some great stories in there. Well, there has been, and it's very different, as you know, to the NRL, where New South Wales Queensland Cup doesn't really get talked about in connection with the NRL, but it is different because of promotion and relegation. Historically, it is different in England.
Didn't even introduce ourselves. My name is Lee Addison.
And my name is John Davidson. I think if people have been listening to this for 8 episodes, they may have worked that out. But
yeah, Lee Addison, poet laureate. I'm a coach in Australia who's obviously not got an Australian accent. I've been here a while. John's a journo in the UK, and you'll work out he doesn't have an English. Well, I would argue sometimes you don't have an Australian accent, if I'm honest. You say something.
I'm a citizen of the world, Lee.
Considering you're based in Yorkshire, you have some mank in your accent somehow, but I don't know how that works. But I do recommend that if you want to know a little bit more about us, please read the description or listen to some old pods, because like John hinted at, we've been doing stuff for a while. We did the Ashes Rugby League podcast in 2025, sorry, geez. And now we've switched to the Super League 360, and everybody who followed us on Ashes Rugby League, you're probably still listening to this on Ashes Rugby League, but please switch over to Super League 360 so that I have to do less work in the next week or two. But you can always listen to it on the Rugby League Coach platforms and on the Rugby League Coach YouTube channel too. So if you subscribe to those, you won't miss a thing. John, your tweet of the week. You've been a little quieter, mind you. We're recording in a shorter window, aren't we? We've not had 7 days in between. The tweet I want to bring up from you was a tweet that you were talking about the London crowd. You said, "Not seen a figure, looks smaller than the Widnes game, maybe 3,000 with a question mark." Which suggests you're asking, was there 3,000?
Yeah, I'd actually asked someone who was at the game who didn't know, another journalist. And I had no idea what the crowd was. I knew it was smaller than just using my eyes as a measure. Yeah. It looked smaller than a Widnes game, which I also watched on YouTube. And my guess was somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000. Yeah, but I had no idea.
And Kieran Bradford Bulls on X accused you of exaggerating attendance figures for a club. I'm pretty sure you were asking a question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if comprehension in the UK is what it was previously or education. Me. But, it wasn't a statement of fact. It was a legitimate, I don't know, it was a question. I don't know how anyone could misunderstand that. I
did a video on my Rugby League Coach platforms from my Rugby League Coach podcast, and I was talking about how wrestling can often be a symptom of a poor tackle in terms of technique. So I was encouraging coaches not to be obsessed with the wrestle over contact. So in other words, make sure you put the contact in before you do the wrestle. And some of the comments I've had, people telling me how important the ruck is, ruck's in, we all know the ruck wins the game, blah, blah, blah. And they're just completely missing my point because they've decided not to listen to the words is often. So,
well, yeah.
And we're wordsmiths a little bit, aren't we? Like we do listen to what each other says and and read what people say and then respond to that, where some people just scam. The Rugby League tweet of the week, I think, undoubtedly, and some Australians won't know this, but Mike Ford's resignation at at Oldham, and it was tweeted, and his son George piled in. And we'll go into this in a moment. Mike Ford said, the direction of travel of the club is not something that I feel I can be part of. And his son George expressed his pride in his daddy and said, it's a travesty it has had to come down to this. Sport is a funny way of exposing the truth as to why things happen. The team and people are always more important than an individual. So we'll unpack that a bit soon, John. But this was something to wake up to one day. This was good on Monday. I was like, oh, what's going on here? I think you were out with family on Sunday and got the news.
Oh, well, I watched the first half of the Oldham London game, and the second half I was in a pool with my kids, taking them swimming. But the fact that came out, or that tweet came out, literally, I think just after full time, and that the photo they used was Mike Ford.
I've got that in Lee's laugh, so don't talk too much. Yeah,
it was just. It was pretty shocking. But apparently the club knew that it was going to happen, but it was a fairly shocking way to announce an exit, I would say.
Get a jab ready too, because you didn't send me a jab. You didn't jab me this week. Socials popper Lee of the week. A post I did about the Aussies, the Australian squad not being the best, even though they won 3-0. A video I did where I said there was too many cooks in the team. So tactically, when I analysed the game, it seemed obvious to me too many people were trying to play in pivotal roles and not leaving it to the halves, basically. And I must have done that post 3 months ago, 3.5 months ago. It's still going, John. Yesterday, Norm Buffler said to me, quote, "You're cooked." Because I said there was too many cooks in the kitchen. And he replied to me, Norm said, "You're cooked." I replied, "You're slow," because the post's been there 3 months. Ruben von Liechtenstein, a week ago, I missed it. It should have been in last week's podcast.
Is that Count Ruben? Because that's a great name.
Von Liechtenstein sounds like a European Parliament senator or something.
He sounds like a Transylvanian prince or something.
The Transylvanian prince said, quote, "Who the F is this TWAT? Hey ho, D head. You C's got belted 3-0. So the F is rhymes with book. The TWAT, you can spell that yourself. D head, Richard Head, and you C's is rhymes with hunt.
Yeah, I endorse that message. It sounds great.
Right. I replied, "Thanks, beautiful." And then sometimes when somebody really abuses me, I have a look at the profile, see if it's a hidden profile. And he actually lives in Brisbane, so I invited him out for a beer to discuss his thoughts about me. So. And the Bradford thing is still going about Jamie Peacock. Do you remember the thing? And I went, on the pod, I went, did he play for Bradford? Oh, yeah he did. Right.
You shouldn't have forgotten. You shouldn't have forgotten that one. Yeah.
And it's that old. I had a Christmas hat on the video. So, and I promise you, I don't wear them in January. And some fella on YouTube had a go at me and said I had something against London because my analysis showed their faults. I had to explain that I'm a coach and it's called analysis.
It's a tough one to understand that, Lee. I mean, an analysis video that looks at strengths and weaknesses is, you shouldn't be doing
Apparently,
that.
I've got something against London. I just said.
Well, in my experience, though, a lot of clubs and a lot of coaches are very anal about, how they train and people finding out, what they do and behind closed doors and in training sessions. They don't like, and I'm talking about in all walks of rugby league. They don't like people. I don't think they're generally reinventing the wheel, but they don't like people knowing. So I'm sure there are people who actually like, oh, don't show the weaknesses of London because someone else will watch it and will give it away.
A couple of years ago, I did a show called Queensland League Scene, and it was hosted by Taylor Brown and John Devine, and Taylor Brown's an ex-player of mine and went on to play Queensland Cup. And I used to do an analysis segment every week, and the analysis segment was very popular, as you can imagine. And apparently, Taylor used to get calls every week off the coaches who the F is this Pommy B? Because basically I'd found all the weaknesses in their side.
Yeah.
And there was one coach who took the exact opposite view of that. He's won premierships, and he actually asked me to do more analysis for his team, and he's probably the most successful coach in that competition in the last few years, and has also coached elsewhere. So tells its own story, if you ask me. We had plenty of questions, John. Sam Grundy asks, how long will quicker ruck be allowed before they change their minds again? He's referring to the rule changes in England or the interpretation changes. The game seems to swing like a pendulum when you look at how it's been refereed over the last couple of decades. He's so right.
Yeah, he's 100% right.
So how long? How long will it last this time?
Yeah, it's hard to know, because it seems to be there's a crackdown every season on one thing or other. It might be high shots, it might be ruck speed, it might be whatever. And then there's a flurry of penalties, and then it kind of peters out round 5 or 6. Yeah, it's impossible to predict. I hope that clubs, the referees hold their nerve, the RFL holds its nerve, and we do have cleaner and quicker rucks.
You probably just answered the question, John. Round 5 or 6.
Yeah. I wouldn't be betting my life on the fact that they stay the same all the way throughout the season.
Ian Stockdale added, the play the ball has got to be a talking point over here, meaning England. It's a joke. Some players touch the ball with their foot, others just throw it between their legs, which spoils the game for me. And he's absolutely right. Now, the other thing, Ian, and I've mentioned this on this podcast once or twice, the amount of times the markers aren't square in Super League.
Yeah.
And you can even look at last year's grand final. And it's been going back, at the very least, since 2019. They've not been policing this, because I was at Wigan versus Salford in the Super League semi-final that year when they got to the grand final, and I was with the Salford fans
2019 behind
the sticks, and it stuck out like dog's testicles because I was behind the sticks, and I'd never noticed it before. And I said to my dad, I said, the markers are never square in this competition. And to me, it sticks out like dog's testicles, and I don't know why they don't fix it. And there was a couple of occasions in the Super League grand final where the referee completely lost control of the ruck, i.e. something messy happened, because that's what happens. Not every ruck is the same. And he lost complete control of it. And I can't even begin to describe what happened at those play the balls, because it was all over the show.
I think that's a fairly regular occurrence. I mean, everything from the markers, the tacklers lying on the play the ball, slowing it down, the actual ability to play the ball with your foot, which the rule seems to be, or at least the interpretation in England, is you just have to make an attempt. So you can just basically put it down and just throw a leg near it. You don't actually have to touch the ball. It is very messy, and I think generally referees just don't want to be blowing the pee out of their whistle, so they kind of turn a blind eye at times. But I think because of that, players think they can get away with it, and then it happens all the time. And the other thing is the 10 metres, which often becomes 9.5, 9 metres, 8. And I think one coach actually told me the theory was, well, you can't really penalise them. If they're all offside, you can't really penalise them. So it's kind of that if their line speed is consistently 9.5 metres, it's very hard to actually penalise them, as a case if you've got a shooter who's coming off, say the A, the A.
There was also something the referees brought in maybe a decade ago where they were actually standing back 11 metres so that they could look at the defensive line better. They were in Australia anyway.
Yeah.
They didn't communicate it very well, so every crowd was shouting, get him on side, and having a coronary, because the defences were literally half a metre or a metre in front of the referee. Sometimes the players didn't know when they were going back 11 metres. One of the greatest comments in rugby league history, for me, one of the most famous, is that's a big 10 or that's a small 10. Well, 10 is 10. And with proper marked fields, which, as we know, is a problem in England, it's a lot easier to officiate. So
I know I know 2 referees went out of vogue in the NRL a while ago, but to be honest, I actually quite liked the 2 referees because you've got one referee who's looking at a ruck and the players laying all over the ball, and then you've got one actually policing a 10. And it's the same in, not to throw in the other go, but it's the same in rugby union. The amount of offsides now in rugby union, and where they don't have to be far back, but their line split is crazy because you can't, literally, there's that much going on. A referee can't really police, can't look from 3 directions. So, yeah.
I don't know what's going on here. Paul Atkinson. You've got a missus, haven't you, John?
I have, yes.
Because Paul Atkinson...
A miracle.
Paul Atkinson wrote and said, "How was the breakfast at the Holiday in York on Sunday?"
Yeah,
were you with Paul? Yeah?
I saw that. It took me back. I'm like, am I being stalked? Yes, I was at the York Holiday in York City Centre on Saturday and Sunday, and I did. The breakfast was lovely. Thank you, Paul. I enjoyed it.
So obviously somebody was in the York
Holiday. I had a full English and I had a croissant as well. It was delightful.
I mean, all I'm hearing is Paul saying it was at the Holiday Inn and you were. So that's all I'm hearing.
He didn't come up and say hello, which is a shame, but it was very nice.
Intrepid.
Yeah.
David Wright, what do you lads make of St. Helens this year? It seems to me they've got too many players that aren't in the right position. I have no idea if they're going to be good or rubbish. Can I start with that? Paul Rowley being the coach, David, and thanks for the question, David, is expect different, I think. So I'm not saying he's out there so much like a Einstein or something or a
great rugby league coach.
Rugby league coach or strange analyst. But he does have a slightly different method of football that's away from the cookie cutter method. So
that's fair.
And I wouldn't be surprised if Paul Rowley has got excited and you might see some players interchanging position a little bit because coaches are coaches and they study all sorts of sports. And again, somebody who's been in vogue a lot in the last decade in the round ball game has been Pep Guardiola. I do think he's possibly coming out of vogue now. But one thing Pep Guardiola does is interchange positions in the middle of games. So your centre-half becomes your midfielder, becomes your right wing, becomes your left wing. They change positions all the time, basically, and change tactical formation. So I wouldn't be surprised if you'll know more about the squad, but I wouldn't be surprised if Paul Rowley is thinking along those lines a little bit just to mess things up. And I know I've done things in the past. I've played without a hooker and had an extra prop on the field and used second rowers to be dummy half on each side. I've played without locks. I've done all sorts. I've played without halves to have 2 extra props on the field. So that there's no rules that say you have to have a fullback, a 6 and a 7, a 9.
Sure.
So which is funny because in England, the team sheet that they put on the door literally says fullback, standoff, scrum half, loose forward, whereas the team sheet in Australia says 1 to 17.
And also, I mean, Jackson Hastings is one of the big St. Helens signings for this year, and he's got the shirt 31. So he's not got 6 or 7. He's got 31, and will probably play in the halves. Although, just building on the point you said, he might. There's rumours that he could play at lock in the 13 spot.
Well, Tim Sheens wanted him there a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and I mean, you look at the success of, say Tommy Dearden in State of Origin and for the Kangaroos more recently, and the way the game has changed to have that sort of more ball-playing lock. Yeah, St. Helens it's a good question because I really can't pick how they're going to go this year. I mean, obviously, Paul Whelan's left. He'd been there, his whole career, but had been there as an assistant for quite a while before becoming head coach. So completely new coach, new philosophy. It is an aging squad in part. They've got some really good young players coming through, but you look at Lomax, Wormsley, Clark, Sirenen, Percival, it's a really aging squad. So how they balance that is going to be interesting. The issue with the halves last year, you had they've got Tristan Saylor, who's a fullback, and then they try to play him at 6. It didn't work, so they moved Wellesby from fullback to 6, which kind of worked. But Lomax, there's a lot of pressure on him to keep him spot. They've got a really good young half back there in George Whitby, but is he, ready to play week in, week out? There's a lot of question marks there. They've signed Nene McDonald, who is very talented, but tends to, be rocks and diamonds and, leaves a lot of clubs. And then, they've signed David Clomar, who obviously he's had a great career in, Origin and Australia, but he's been sort of shown the door at a couple of clubs now, at least, West and Newcastle. So he's also heading towards the end. So St Helens are a weird one. I think they could be anything from, top 3 till about 8th or 9th. I really can't say. I mean, I think they'll probably end up 5th or 6th, but it's quite an unpredictable one. And what that spine, whether they go with Lomax and Hastings, or whether they go with Lomax or Whitby, or whether they go with Whitby and Hastings, or Hastings is at 13.
So you've got Whitby, Lomax, Hastings, Wellesby, Saylor.
And Saylor. Yeah, and Saylor. And Saylor is not a 6. His best position is fullback, and I think they've used him at fullback. They've used him in the wing. They signed him as a 6, but it just didn't work because he's a ball runner. He's not really a half. He's a fullback. So, it's an interesting one. But, they've also got some great players. Harry Robertson's a real star. George Delaney, they've got Matty Lees. They've got, some real experience there. So it's,
I think they're going to play a lot of football. I think they're going to play a lot of football.
I mean, generally, Paul Rowley's teams have thrown the ball around and been quite entertaining, and that's probably the Holbrook and Wolf and Wellens area has been really more based around defence
and
lines,
and
structure. This is different.
With my coaching hat on, right? If the Rooks speed up, it's not necessarily the best way to play football, because if the Rooks speed up, you're better playing a little bit more north-south to get momentum.
Yeah.
So I always said in Super League about a decade ago, when Sean Wayne's Wigan sides, or maybe a bit longer, when Sean Wayne's Wigan sides were doing well and Madge's Wigan sides, the simpler you are in Super League tended to work because the Rooks were so fast, but they've allowed them to get slow. And it's like touch rugby, as they call it in England, or touch, as they call it in Australia. Players just literally go in and dump the ball on the ground, and they just scoot from dummy half. It's because it's all about getting momentum.
Yeah.
So it's going to be intriguing to watch that, and therefore it's really important that the referees stick to their guns so that people can plan. So Paul Rowley will have to think about that too, and the balance between going forward and going sideways. Matthew Durnley, these questions are brilliant, by the way. Our followers are smart. Matthew Durnley said, given the current structure of Super League, lack of money in the game below Super League, do you think it would be worth moving to a similar model to the NRL, which is funny, you've already mentioned it a little bit. Affiliated clubs that allow reserve players to develop under a stronger competition like the Championship, just like New South Wales and Queensland Cups, would still keep their identity like Redcliffe and Bears have done? That's the question.
I mean, it's a great question. I've advocated for that for years. The problem is because of the way the English game is set up, and until recently when we had League One, and in the past we had Toronto who went from League One, got into Championship, and then went into Super League, and eventually, usually it was you had to work your way up the divisions. Which is what Toulouse have done, which is what York have done, and Bradford this year. But that's the problem, is you have clubs who are aspiring to be in Super League. So you can't really be a feeder team if you are aspiring to be in Super League. The Blacktown, whatever they are, the Blacktown Sea Eagles are not aspiring to be in the NRL because they are Manly's feeder club, and the same with all the other ones.
It's a different system.
It's the promotion and relegation system.
England has a sporting class system.
Yeah, but in saying that, I think we are, because of, as that commenter said, the lack of money in the game, we are moving that way, because you look at what York's doing with Newcastle and, effectively...
Well,
York,
Simon Hall's asked that question. What's your thoughts on the link-up between York and Newcastle?
Yeah.
And lots of traditionalists are losing their minds. So tell everybody about that link, please, John.
Well, effectively, the owner of Newcastle, 18 months or so ago, pulled out. I think he went through a divorce. He was, I think his name was Seymour Curdy. And he went through a divorce. He owned the Newcastle Falcons and the Newcastle Thunder, so the rugby union, the rugby league clubs. Went through a divorce, sold the clubs, and effectively the Thunder basically almost went bust. It was a volunteer-run club with a load of local kids, university kids from Newcastle, and they were getting pumped every week. Now, York have they've invested in the Newcastle Thunder, and they're using it basically as their feeder team. Now, that's pissed off a lot of people, but to be honest, I think it's quite smart from York. I think we talked about this on another podcast. The reserve competition doesn't really exist anymore, so there's not really a pathway from under-19s to Super League if you're not ready at, say, 18, 19 to make that jump. So the championship is the way in between, and it's just a smart ploy, I think, by York. I think we'll see more and more of it. But the issue is, like we mentioned, London and Oldham. Like, London want to be in Super League, so they're not going to be a feeder club for anyone, are they? Oldham want to be in Super League as well. They've got aspirations. So it's kind of a 1 foot in, 1 foot out kind of system. It's not fully copied the NRL model, but maybe in the future it will.
Let's just do a selfie, John.
Oh, why not?
Isn't the dual contract thing that's been scrapped? Isn't that sort
dual
of
reg?
In the dual reg? Isn't that going in a different direction?
Yeah, I mean, effectively, it's a loan system now. I mean, dual reg was quite controversial because a lot of clubs and players didn't like it. You're a Leeds player, but you went on dual reg to Fev for, say, a month, but you were playing in their colours, and people didn't seem to like it. But it's effectively a loan system now. So yeah, it's changed, but there is still movement between the divisions in terms of players.
I'll stop doing selfies now. Cockwomble12 on X said, how seriously are English Rugby League stakeholders taking the potential of Sky not bidding for the next Super League broadcast deal? Is there any chatter about rival bidders waiting in the wings, or are the rivals queuing up to talk to Volandis first?
Well, there's been people trying to discredit Steve Mascord's report, a couple of people, which is a bit pathetic, I would say. But
go into a bit more detail about that report in case anybody...
well, effectively, Steve did a column for our Patreon site talking about, things that he'd heard coming from Australia, that after this next contract that Sky wouldn't be bidding for Super League, which, if true, is very concerning and very worrying. I've been asking around. There hasn't been much talk at senior levels about the Sky deal. No one seems to be saying anything or about negotiations. I know we covered this before, but TNT lost the Champions League, so there is the argument that they have money to invest in another sport. But yeah, I think the real problem is, and a lot of people don't seem to realise how nationally rugby league in the UK is not popular. It's just not big enough. It doesn't get enough publicity. And while
Let's stop this podcast now. Nobody cares about us.
No, well, the thing is, people do care, but it's probably a core of about 200,000 people, and it's not, if anything, the national profile since the 90s, since the start of Super League, and maybe since the early 2000s, has gone downhill. And that's reflected. So it's very hard. They need another bidder to come in, and we need to push the game. We need more publicity. We need more airtime. We need to be marketing ourselves a lot better. I mean, just to lastly add on that, I mean, attendances were up last year, so that's a good sign. Ratings were up, but to actually grow the TV contract, it's going to be difficult because it's a very tough TV market. Like, people don't watch TV like they used to in the past. They watch Netflix, they watch streaming, they watch YouTube. It's not, Saturday night I sit down at 8:00 and watch The Box. It's just not how people consume.
I got a little bit of. Sorry if I interrupted. I got a little bit of thought from a Sky employee when I was talking to them about this issue, and they had a feeling that Sky would be loyal in terms of they've basically grown with the sport of rugby league and the English Premier League, and the two things happened at the same time in the early to mid 90s. So they've grown together, and those who are of a certain vintage will remember the old BSB dishes, satellite dishes, and then the B Sky B dishes, and Eddie and Steve-O at grounds like Featherstone all of a sudden making the game sound and look a bit more glamorous. So I think if there is that kind of thought, then Sky will be loyal, even if they're not paying very much. So it doesn't mean there's going to be a better deal. David Mason, 93, asked if there's any further news on an NRL takeover. I'm already tired of Nigel's clowns, he said. So do you want me to answer that one? Because I've got a little bit of something.
Yeah, I mean, you can answer that because I've not heard. It's been very quiet on that front. I'll let you answer that one.
I mean, there's a sign there straight away. There's probably not that many people in England of a certain caliber who are interested in this job. So I've heard from Australia that it really is an open field. So what I want to say to listeners and watchers on YouTube now, and sorry to any of those who had to sign in last week, still learning about this YouTube thing, right? Hopefully it's all fine and dandy this week. The NRL could still be having a say because, and they could even contribute because I know for a fact that interested parties in Australia in this job are talking with the NRL administration just as much as they're talking with the English administration. So I know that for a fact. And one candidate in particular has got support on both sides of the world. So if you think about this, right? So I'm not talking about any individual. If you think about this, one of the ways to swing the negotiations could be Volandis saying to the Rugby Football League, we will pay for the CEO, the new CEO. That then could be the person that they have on the ground in the competition. Now, just because they have somebody on the ground in the competition doesn't mean they necessarily have to control it. It could just be, we'll do it for 2 years just to see more of a feasibility study. Who knows, right? Then we've also got this concept of the TV rights. Okay, so out of the two competitions, Australia, the NRL, Peter Volandis and the NRL, they're more likely to get a better TV deal. That's
the understatement of the century.
But I also mean a better one in terms of what they got last time. So an increased TV deal.
Yes.
And therefore, to add value to that, if they can somehow get Super League content in there, it's more content. So I think this search for a new Rugby Football League CEO, whoever they decide on, will give you the biggest hint yet as to where it's going. Okay?
Yeah.
So if they get somebody who's, I'm sorry to say this, but somebody who Nigel Wood wants to control, well, that gives us a big indication where it's going. If we get somebody from Australia who has got either an endorsement from Peter Volandis in the NRL or potentially some money. Now, why would the Rugby Football League like some money for a CEO? Well, apparently they're not flush with cash, so that would help things too. So
there is some talk that it will most likely be either an internal appointment or the RFL or someone that Nigel Wood wants. And to be honest, I would be pretty surprised if Wood, McManus, Beaumont, etc., give up their power and control to an outsider. I'd be very surprised, but it's possible. But yeah.
So look, well, what we can both say then. So in answer to that question is, I am literally saying both options are still on the table right now. And if you want to know the direction of the future of the game, if you want to know what they're thinking, this CEO decision. So if they go with what you've just said, you know that any chance of the NRL getting involved probably diminishes with that. If they go with somebody that is coming from Australia with NRL links. It could still be on the table. So it's probably quite an important moment in the future of the game in England. It really is.
Yeah, and I think allied to that is this TV negotiation that's on the moment. So I think if the TV deal doesn't increase or if it goes down further, then that could be a tipping point to be like, okay, well, we actually need to get the NRL in here because we're stuffed. It's a very, very important negotiation, this next TV deal.
Now, depending on what happens, we could be the ones to break the story, re the CEO. So, John, put your contact details on there. Let people need to follow you because if it goes in a certain direction, you'll be breaking it.
I don't know about that. I may be, I may not. But yeah, you can get me on X at Johnny D. Davidson. You can get me on Facebook at John Davidson, journalist.
I'm Rugby League Coach on socials. Message me on Instagram and Facebook only, please. But I'm everywhere else. And rugbyleaguecoach.com.au. Email is admin@rugbyleaguecoach.com.au. Okay, let's drop a division. Mike Ford, Oldham, Bill Quinn. Discuss.
Yeah, about a couple of hours before we started recording, Bill Quinn put out a 9 or so minute video, because
the chairman of Oldham, that's right.
Yeah, sorry, the chairman and the owner of Oldham. Now,
in the Division World Super League.
Yes, the speculation is that Mike Ford quit because he had a falling out with Bill Quinn.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a Oldham supporters group put out a letter on Sunday night Sunday or Monday night, asking for honesty and transparency and answers because not only with Mike Ford's departure and that of Sean Long in September, there's been a winding up petition in December, which is also resurfaced, which, sources of the club say it's been paid. It's just a formality now, but there's also been reports or allegations of unpaid wages. And Bill Quinn is also in a conflict with Oldham Athletic, who own Boundary Park, which is the home ground that they play in, and he's been banned
the soccer team
the soccer team. Basically, he's been banned from going to Boundary Park. So it was quite a remarkable video, and in it, it's hard to recap, but basically he said he'd be stepping down as chairman. He'll be taking Oldham Athletic to court over the stadium dispute. He'll be letting the lawyers handle it. He also had a bit of a go at some of the fans for what he called disgraceful comments about him and about the club on social media. Mm-hmm. And he said he'll walk if most of the Oldham fans want him gone. He also claimed that he was unaware of some of the debts, but they're being sorted at the moment. And he said also that the winding up petition has been paid. So, pretty out there video.
So we need to take a couple of steps back to explain to people who might not be over it. So Oldham, a club who maybe 18 months, 2 years ago, started to make some big statements about their
I think he took over
direction of travel.
Yes, I think he took over, 2 to 3 years ago, and I think Bill Quinn's put in a lot of money, millions of pounds. They've got a host of ex-Super League players, Queensland Cup players, and they won League One, I think the year before last.
Which would have been the third tier then.
Yes, which no longer exists now. And then they finished fourth in the championship last year.
Mm-hmm.
And they're one of the they did apply to get promoted into Super League, but they didn't. Their application wasn't successful. But they are an ambitious club, and you'd know the history of Oldham a lot more than me, Lee. But I think they were in Super League in the initial stages.
Yeah, they were in the initial Super League. I can't remember how many Super Leagues exactly before they slipped out, but they were definitely in.
But they weren't. Yeah, they've been in the doldrums for decades.
Because it was hilarious. It was hilarious that we had Super League, everything glitz and glamour, yet they were still at the watersheddings. And I think it was at Oldham that they pranked Mike Stevenson. So one of the initiatives in Super League initially was Mike Stevenson was going to call out the players. Number one, Johnny Davidson, number 2, Lee Addison. Right? Well, the players started messing around with it, and Martin Afire, number 5, Martin Afire, and Mick Cassidy would walk out with his albino hair and whatnot. So, and that happened at the watersheddings, apparently. So they were part of the initial Super League, and like you said, fallen from grace. Anyway, a few years ago, the noises started to be.
The thing with Oldham is, though, they've always been like a historic rugby league area. They've always produced great players. I mean, Kevin Sinfield came from Oldham, Paul Sculthorpe, Barry McDermott. There's lots of others. I think Mike Ford originally was Oldham, but obviously they made their names at other clubs like Leeds and St Helens and Wigan, etc. But so they've been on the march, and then all this has sort of cropped up in the last couple of months. It's really.
Bob Lidner played for Oldham for our Aussie fans. Bob Lidner.
There you go.
And you're right about Oldham being a hotbed. So I've done some work in Oldham through my business rugby league coach, and in terms of the grassroots, it's still really strong. It gives rugby league a massive identity. Anyway, so part of this new wave, Mike Ford, who's had a big history in rugby union lately as well, old Great Britain Rugby League international, ended up in rugby union, so quite high profile in England. His son George, I think, has played for the England rugby union team.
Still plays. And I think Mike Ford played for the Cowboys back in the 90s as well. Queensland.
So he ended up being the director of rugby at Oldham for a period of time. Looking back now, again, something we said on this podcast, Alan Kilshaw coming in as coach suggests to me that Mike Ford has been suggesting this could be on the cards for a while. And what happened on Sunday, immediately after the game, Mike Ford tweeted out he was leaving Oldham. The game, London played Oldham, so if you like, a real statement game in terms of the two teams that are wanting to be in Super League next year, or two of the teams, and London won reasonably convincingly, and within minutes of the final whistle and final hooter, Mike Ford tweeted out, and again in Lee's laugh, I'm going to be talking about that tweet, and then his son George added in what I mentioned earlier. So with hindsight, looks like Mike Ford's been thinking about this for a while and putting the wheels in motion because now they've got a technical coach. It used to be Sean Long. Sean Long left 4 months ago.
September, I think it was. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a few red flags popping up here, and I always say to people who split up with a partner or something like that, if you look back at the last 6 months, 12 months, there'll be some red flags that you didn't pick up at the time that will make sense now. And I think there's some red flags when it comes to this Oldham thing that I'm picking up as we go along. So literally overnight, while I've been asleep and while you've been intrepid finding out what's going on in the world of English rugby league, Bill Quinn's done a video as chairman because he's under siege and he's made a load of statements. What is the fan sentiment to that video?
I mean, I think it's mixed. I think there's been a lot of criticism of Bill and the club of not providing answers, and there's obviously people who support him. But I think, look, it's great that he's come out and made a statement, but having a go at the fans is never really a great tactic. I think he probably could have got across his point maybe a little bit smarter. And obviously, there's a lot of claims made in that statement. He's obviously frustrated. He's unhappy. But yeah, it's not generally from the outside looking in. And as I said, I've never met Bill Quinn, never interviewed him, don't know him. But different people have said different things about him, about the club. It's hard to know what to believe at the moment. It's just the English game has a history of these sort of things erupting at different clubs.
It's peak rugby league.
It's very peak level. And look, I hope for the Oldham's fans' sake and for the Oldham club that it all gets sorted and, everyone's paid what they're owed and the club can continue on because he has put a lot of money into the club. We don't, with what's happened at Featherstone and at Salford, we definitely don't want another club to go under, which is, unfortunately seems to be happening a lot in recent times.
And this club isn't going under yet, but it's certainly possibly heading south. We mentioned London then, and they won again. So they beat Widnes in round 1, won their cup tie, and then have now won this game against Oldham. I think it was 20-8, something like that.
25-8 or something like that.
Okay,
yeah.
In front of their 8,000 fans, as speculated by me. If anyone wants to have a go at me, and it was the biggest crowd ever. I'm taking the Donald Trump approach to it. Biggest crowd ever. Everyone's saying it. Now, a real big tie coming up this weekend is they play Bradford Bulls in the cup, and we should preview a little bit and talk about the Challenge Cup. It's the 125th version of the Challenge Cup, John. It's been held annually since 1896, and it's the world's oldest cup competition in either code of rugby, and it's 24 years behind the Soccer FA Cup, which had its first final in 1872. This competition has been going since January. Round 1 was the amateurs, second tier was the championship, so the second round was the second tier. And now the Super League clubs start to join. And this is an intriguing tie.
Mm.
Bradford Bulls, who finished higher than London last year in Super League, in the Championship, finished 3rd. London finished 7th, I think. So Bradford ended up going up to Super League for reasons we've discussed on these podcasts.
I mean, you can't compare how they finished because basically London have.
Well, let me finish, and then you right. but London didn't have. Bradford didn't. You've knocked me off track. Bradford didn't have investment from Australia in the form of Darren Lockyer and Grant Wessel.
Yeah.
Thank you for interrupting me, John. So that's why it's an intriguing tie, and Bradford. I mean, we will preview Bradford, and I think we'll admit that it's going to be a tough year for them. Yet, London Broncos have also got a Super League and NRL caliber team, and they're playing in London. And I actually think this is a real potential 50-50 game that could go either way. We could have our first Challenge Cup shock for so long, couldn't we, John?
Yeah, 100%. I don't even think necessarily it'd be a shock if London win. Look, I think they've been talking about this game for a couple of weeks. The potential, I think they see it as a huge opportunity if they win to sort of show, what they can do. And I think the ticket prices are £10, so they're really trying to get a big crowd in there. And it'll be a statement if they win. They've got a very strong. I think there's probably an argument that London could be in Super League now, and would probably make the likes of York and Bradford and Toulouse. But Bradford, they've also basically, I'm just trying to have a look at the squad that they've brought in, but they've signed something like 15 players, loads from other Super League clubs, a couple from the Championship, the likes of Ryan Sutton from the Bulldogs. So they've also got a new head coach in Kurt Haggerty, who was the assistant coach at Salford. So they're a brand new squad as well. It's really tough to sort of see. They've obviously they played Leeds a couple of weeks ago and got kind of convincingly beat, but I think they were missing 9 first-team regulars. So, yeah, it's really intriguing. I'm going to be at this game, and I've never been to the stadium at Wimbledon, but I'm really looking forward to a really tough competitive game and a huge amount to play for, because I'm sure Bradford don't want to be knocked off. It'd be a bit embarrassing. They actually did that to Castleford last year in the Challenge Cup at Odsal, and that was before the Super League started, and that was a real slap in the face for Cass. So Bradford will be desperate to keep their run in the Cup going and not suffer that upset, and London will be pushing all guns for the scalp.
Cass have a history of this. They lost to Featherstone in 2012 as well in the Cup, so Cass have been the whipping boys. I wonder what the chances are of some of the other ties being shocks, though. Rochdale are hosting Wigan, and that hasn't happened since December 94.
I mean, I don't know what team Wigan will put out, but that could be 60 or 70 points.
Workington are hosting St Helens for the first time since 1996.
Yeah, again, that you'd think that'd be 40 or 50. Leeds v Widnes, you'd think Leeds by at least 30 or more. Yeah.
Sheffield are playing Warrington for the first time since July 1999.
Yeah. I can't see any other upsets. In that round, to be fair.
Salford are playing Hull FC, which would have happened last year, but it's very different because Salford have dropped quite significantly.
That could be 60 or 70 points, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. And Hull KR are warming up for Brisbane by playing the amateurs Loch Lane. So to put that in context for Australian listeners and viewers, that's like Brisbane Broncos playing against... It's not even like playing St Mary's in Sydney or Logan Brothers Seniors or somebody in the Bay. It's literally like playing against really one of the lower A-grade clubs in quite an obscure town.
Frankly. I mean, there's probably not a direct comparison, but I don't know, South Sydney playing the Maitland Pumpkin Pickers or...
Well, I picked Brisbane because they're the champions like Hull KR are. And so it really, out of all the sides that could have been drawn against an amateur side, this really is the toughest. Like, Loch Lane will have to poison the breakfast or something. They need divine intervention.
Yeah.
Let's have some transfer news now. So Hull KR's neighbour have signed Lewis Martin, the wing, for 5 years. I think he's about 22, 23 years old, so not a bad bit of business.
Yeah, he's a really exciting young talent. I think he topped the try-scoring ranks last year. It's probably a little bit unlucky not to make the England squad for the Ashes, and one of the best young outside backs in England. So, great bit of business for them, a local junior. To tie him down, bodes well for the Black and Whites.
The NRL is considering changing its name to the EARL, the English and Australian Rugby League, because there's that many English people being linked to clubs at the moment or already here. Cronulla Sharks are apparently the favourites to sign Owen Trout from Lee.
Well, the Perth Bears are in for Owen Trout as well as Mikolai Aledzki from Leeds. So there's been a few people joking that it'll be the Perth Rhinos next year when they play their first game. But it's I think you look at the history of English forwards in the NRL, there's not been many who haven't done well. It's very different when you look at spine players and outside backs. Not many have done well, but your Burgesses, your Grahams, your Whiteheads, your Batemans, Morley, Ellis, etc., they generally do quite well. Matty Nicholson, Morgan Smithies more recently. So, Perth, they need players. And there's not a lot of players who seem willing to go from the East Coast over time for Perth. So they're certainly mining Super League for talent. And Owen Trout is an England international, one of the top forwards in Super League, and he's got quite a few offers. I think Lee are keen to keep him, but he's also got 2 clubs in the NRL after him.
Mikkel Ledge tried to get him to play for Poland in 2018, 2019 for obvious reasons.
And did he tell you where to go?
He wouldn't do that because he wouldn't be disrespectful to the country of his birth, would he?
But no, he declined politely.
Well, he didn't end up playing, John. That's all you need to know.
Well, he's played 5 tests. He's played 5 tests for England. He was involved with the recent Ashes. Yeah, he was born in Gdansk. I think he moved over to England at the age of 5. But he's a good prop. 27 years old. He's got an NRL clause in his contract, so even though he's under contract at Leeds, I think he can go if he wants. So, it wouldn't shock me to see him link up with Perth.
George Williams confirmed now that he's going to the Dolphins in 2027.
Yeah,
that's secret.
Worst kept secret. That's been reported and talked about for, if not half a year. It is an interesting one, though, because I don't know exactly when he came back. Was it 2019? Maybe later. Maybe it was 2021. He was obviously at Canberra and he did well at Canberra. And I think, the quote was, I think that his partner was homesick and he's had a couple of kids. And he came back to Super League. He's obviously a Wiganer, but Warrington offered him a lot more money. and I think he said he wanted to go to Warrington and win trophies, which hasn't happened. So he's going back to Australia, and he's going to link up the Dolphins with Christian Wolff, who's obviously the former St Helens coach. So it looks like it'll be him and Izzy Katoa in the halves for the Dolphins in 2027.
Somebody who may end up in Australia because Joey loves him is Ewan Irwin, and I think you got excited about him this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was the end of last year. He signed a 5-year deal or a 4-year deal with Warrington. He's only 18, but yeah, Andrew Johns has waxed lyrical about him. And I didn't see the Warrington League game, but I did see the highlights and the try that he set up for Joe Philbin, the match-winning try. Just a beautiful, took the ball to the line, and just that vision to dink in a grubber in between a defender straight into Philbin's lap to win the game. You know, at 18, you don't. I mean, you're the coach and the analyst Lee, but you don't see. Well, I haven't seen a lot of 18-year-old halfbacks do that in the first team. You know, against men. With the pressure on. And, you know, Andrew Johns is probably the greatest player of all time. So if he rates him, he knows a bit about footy. So, you know, England need halves, don't they, Lee? As the Ashes has shown. So
Phil Webster 1085. You said I'm a coach and an analyst. Phil Webster 1085 on YouTube 6 hours ago about my Hull KR analysis video said, never heard so much hogwash. This bloke is so Aussie-centric, it's unreal. I wouldn't let him near a school team.
Well, I think that's more because of your conviction, isn't it? That's why you're not allowed to penny.
Yeah. I'm going to reply to him live. Well, I've had 12 years as a head coach of elite high schools in Oz.
You just want to be Australian, Lee. That's your problem. You're biased towards everything.
NRL clubs, couple of NRL clubs, etc. What's your qualification?
Don't egg on the trolls.
No, sometimes I enjoy it.
You've got to kill them with kindness.
Well, I called somebody beautiful. Even though they call me all sorts of names under the sun. Some Super League quick fire previews. Leeds Rhinos.
Yeah,
the Perth Rhinos.
I was chatting to Gary Sofield today, and as a ex-Leeds legend, he's tipped them to win the comp this year. Right. Look, I think they'll be up there. I think they'll be in the top 3. Whether they can go all the way, I'm not convinced. But they did beat Hull KR twice last year, and they've certainly got a very well balanced squad across the park. So I think with Brad Arthur there, they'll have a good chance of winning something.
Hull FC.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big improvement last year under John Cartwright, his first year. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head who they've recruited. I know they've signed the 2 back rows from St Helens. Yeah, I think they'll be pushing for the top 6, whether they make it or not. But I can see them finishing around that 7-6 mark.
John Cartwright's a good coach.
He's a very good coach. Look, I remember him as a great back rower. That's how old I am, playing for Penrith and
played for Salford too.
And New South Wales. He had a season at Salford, and he's been coaching for a long time. And he did a great job there last year. So, look, I think they're moving in the right direction. Whether they can improve on last year may be difficult, but we'll see.
I think he's still got the Titans the closest to the NRL Grand Final out of every coach.
He got them deep into
prelim, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was 2010, 2011. But yeah, he's certainly the most successful Titans coach in the history of that club. And yeah, I think he's a very good coach, and yeah, he's doing a good job there.
And I remember looking at their skills at the time and thinking they'd been coached really well. Bradford Bulls, we've mentioned them a little bit already.
Yeah, it's a tough one, as we said, with so many new players making a switch from part-time to full-time, new coach. Yeah, I think they're going to be in the bottom 3. If they can avoid finishing bottom, that will be a success. But yeah, I think it'll be a difficult year for Bradford. Obviously, their fans will be very happy they're back in Super League after 10 years, which is completely understandable. But yeah, I think they'll find it difficult on the field in terms of getting results week in, week out.
Wakefield Trinity.
Yeah, another one, great season last year, getting into the semi-finals. I know they brought in Tyson Smoothie from the Broncos and Jazz Tavanga from Manly, among others. Yeah, I think they can repeat what they did. Darryl Powell is a good coach, knows what he's doing, very experienced, and I think they can make the semis. It will certainly be in that mix. Yeah.
The French side to lose, or one of the two French sides?
Yeah, much like Bradford and York, it's going to be a really tough ask for them. They've got to pay something like close to €1 million for the travel, and then they only get half the central distribution, so about £650,000. So recruitment has been minimal. They've not brought in many players. We've got Tyler Dupree on loan from Wigan. But they are full-time, so that makes it easier. But, yeah, I think finishing around 12th, 13th, 14th is probably what's going to happen for Toulouse.
Castleford Tigers.
Yeah, again, almost a whole new squad there. Ryan Carr's come in from St George Illawarra, assistant coach. Look, he's got experience in the English game. He was at Fev, and he was in the running for the Leeds job a couple of years ago. He's a talented young coach. I think he can improve them, but I can't see them making the top six.
And the last one. So if you're wondering where the others are, guys, it's last week's podcast. We did 7. This week we're doing 7. Wigan.
Yeah, I think. I think Wigan will be in that top 2, top 3. They'll be pushing for silverware. Last year wasn't great for them, but they still finished second and made the grand final. With their fit players back, with Bevan French firing, Jay Field firing, they can definitely, they can definitely win something. They've still got that young talent, that academy coming through, but they have lost a few players in terms of departures, and I think maybe the question mark over their forwards. They've lost Harvey Hill to Hull FC and Liam Byrne to Warrington. So whether they can unearth some young gems from their academy will be a question mark.
Media Watch, Michael Chammas, the Sydney Morning Herald journalist and TV commentator, is firming to become the Papua New Guinea Chief General Manager of Football type thing. That news broke this week in Australia.
I think conversations that I had with him during the Ashes has obviously steered him onto the right path now.
Yes.
I think there was Andrew Webster broke that they were considering him for the GM of football for the Perth franchise. I think, Michael didn't want to talk about it back in November much, but obviously Peter V'landys is a big fan of his. I think he's a very talented journo, great writer, smart, football brain, and it'll be an interesting challenge. You don't generally see people, old school journos sort of making the shift into executive positions in rugby league that much. It's an interesting one. It's a big job at PNG, isn't it, with all the challenges they've got? So, it'd be fascinating to watch, see how he goes.
And the NRL have also hinted at a possible game in Singapore.
Yeah, I think that's Perth. Perth have hinted at that. Obviously, Singapore, in terms of geography, I think it's about a 3-hour flight. It's very close. They've got close links there. I lived in Singapore for 18 months and played a bit of touch footy out there. There's not really a rugby league scene. There's obviously a lot of Aussie expats and Kiwi expats. And they have got, great stadiums, but it is more of a rugby union country in that sense. But look, if it's backed by the government, Singapore's quite a wealthy place. It could make sense. And
there's lots of Australian and English tourists in Singapore, so they'd probably turn out.
There's a lot of expats, a lot of tourists. It's a very safe, clean place to live and to stay. So, yeah, you can see Singapore.
The beer's expensive, though.
The beer is very, very expensive. I think the Singapore Sevens are actually on, and the Rugby Sevens are actually on in Singapore right as we this weekend. So, we'll wait and see on that one.
Are you going to jab anyone this week?
The only thing I'd say is just common courtesy and it's not even something of my work, but if you're going to write about something that another journalist has written about, particularly online, just give them attribute them properly, give them a link. whether it's a hyperlink or the name of the publication. Don't just nick it and write about it and use it for your own.
Or at least say Johnny Davidson in the
Patreon,
that's
what I mean.
said this.
Don't just, and it's nothing to do with me, it's actually a colleague, but don't just put their name and said, they wrote this, somewhere. Give them a proper link and an attribution, because otherwise it's not plagiarism, but it's just not really the done thing to do. So
people have been writing to me. I'm doing a free webinar on February the 18th for coaches. If you're interested, email me admin@rugbyleaguecoach.com.au. Somebody whose name I recognise from the rugby league world sent me an email that said free webinar. That was it. Not, hi, please can I come on the free webinar? My name is... Thank you. And there's loads of them. Loads. People messing me up. So, Lee's laugh this week, it's that Mike Ford picture. So, as you've already hinted, the way that Oldham released the fact that Mike Ford was leaving, or the way that Mike Ford released that he was leaving, was a little bit comical. But somewhere in there was a picture of Mike Ford that I think he staged it. I think he's gone, right, I'm gonna pack in at the end of this game. I'm just gonna stand here and watch the warm up. Can you take a picture of me? That's literally what it looks like. And it looks like he's looking across the vista. He could be on a bridge overlooking a canal or something, the way he's looking across.
At least he didn't use AI.
True. But it definitely looks like he staged it. And one of the comments underneath the tweet was somebody described his shoes as Bobby Dazzler's because he's dressed in black, but he's got quite a bright pair of tan shoes on that stand out. So, I just found it a very strange way of announcing. Yeah. I mean, by all means, put a picture, but that kind of picture just seemed a bit, I don't know what it seemed.
I think the timing was unusual. The picture and an empty London stadium was unusual, before kickoff. Yeah, obviously a statement that alludes to certain things but isn't that clear. It's just added to the long list of peak rugby league instances, won't we, Lee?
Go to the Rugby League Coach YouTube channel, have a look for a video called The White Wall Brisbane Have to Break to Be World Champions. And that is the video that I've been accused of being so Aussie-centric. And I've done an analysis of Hull KR's defence. Now, what people don't understand, John, is even though a defence stops people scoring sometimes, it doesn't mean it's perfect. And also, the quality of the attack of Wigan, I am very, very, very convinced Brisbane's attack, if it clicks, will be better. Am I on a different planet there to the rest of the rugby league world, or
did you say Wigan then? You meant Hull KR?
No, Wigan's attacking against Hull KR's defence. Listening skills, Johnny.
I think you're fair.
Yeah. So Reece Walsh is going to be better than some of the attackers in the Wigan side. So obviously, the defence is only as good as what's thrown at it as well.
Yes. 100%.
So it's called being an analyst. Or as some people like to think of me, an analyst, but I'm not one of them. So that video is now separate on YouTube because we tend to have long podcasts now. So in terms of the future of this podcast, it's likely to come out on Monday morning UK time now because myself and John are going to record on Sunday nights reviewing the Super League round. Otherwise, the podcast would age very quickly if we brought it out later in the week. But, so you're not going to get a podcast for about 9 days, because I'm not promising this first one, but what me and John want to do on a Thursday or a Friday is do a short after a game, immediately after the game. So John will either be at the game or he'll be watching on TV, depending on what the game is, on a Thursday or a Friday. And we're going to do instant reactions after the first, either a Thursday game or a Friday game. The problem is, I'm not going to promise it next week, John, because I might not be in good Wi-Fi, because I might be in the bush somewhere. So we will try, but the week after we're definitely going to do it, aren't we, John, which will be the World Club Challenge week. So you might have a little wait for your next Super League 360, but don't worry, it will be worth the wait. Johnny, where can people get you again?
You can get me on Patreon at rugbyleaguehub.com long reads. They can get me in the iPaper, on X at Johnny D. Davidson, and Facebook at John Davidson Journalist.
And I'm Lee Addison, rugbyleaguecoach.com.au, admin at rugbyleaguecoach.com.au if you want to email me, at rugbyleaguecoach on social media. I'm knackered, John. Stop making me do these things in mornings. Take care.